Hi everyone, I'm going to go over the After Effects interface. So the first thing you want to do is you want to launch After Effects. You can just click on the search button, put in After, Adobe After, and then it just pops up and you would launch the program. You also want to make sure you have a folder that you want to name After Effects and whatever week you're on. And in this folder, you want to put in any type of photographs or video or audio that you want to use for your projects. You don't want to have things on your desktop randomly, so I'm just going to put in a couple of photos here. Maybe and I'm gonna actually, once I do that, just to stay organized, I'm gonna create a new folder, call it photos, and just keep the names really simple. And I'm going to move these photos into the folder. And the second thing that I'm gonna do quickly is I'm going to go back to my After Effects page. I'm going to create a new project. If you already have a project, you can just click say open project, and here it is asking you for a new composition, which I'm going to basically just click on this icon here. So the setting that I want you to use for now is going to be this setting. You can use either 25 or 29. And this page, basically this would be the name of your project. I'm going to say my first project because this is just a test, so I'm just going to put test. And this would be the duration of your project. So the first two numbers indicates the number of frames in your project. The second set of numbers indicates the minutes. The third set of numbers is going to, I'm sorry, frames. This one would be seconds. The second set of numbers would be this number of seconds on your project. The third set of numbers would be the minutes, and the last one would be the hours. And this would be your background color. And remember, this is just so that it's not really a background. It's actually, as I'm going to show you in a second, is basically blank, but you just put that background in there so you can see what's going on, so you can animate your projects a little easier. So I'm going to so now I have my project. This is the icon of the project. So as you can see, this is my project window. So anything that I add to my project would be imported to this panel here. And this is my composition window. And as you could see, if I click on this icon, the second to the right, you can see there's really nothing there, and it's just that black background is set so that I can see things a little easier. And this area is my extended this area is my horizontal timeline. And as you can see, these are identified by the seconds, and my project was set to 30 seconds with a black background. And you can see the project is set to 30 seconds and the background is black. But if I wanted to change it to another color, I can simply come back here and change it to another color. It depends on your animation. Maybe sometimes you need to have a white background, or you know, it basically depends on your project, but this is where you can actually change that. So this is set to full. Generally want to kind of keep it here for the time being. By default, so if I go to my window workspace, you want to make sure your default window is set to standard. You have a lot of different options here. You have your effects panel, which we'll get to at a later date. If you see a little asterisk here, it means that your project is not saved, and you can kind of see the untitled. project. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Save As or Command Shift S. You want to make sure you save your project in the folder that you initially created. So I'm going to say Intro to AE. I'm going to go ahead and save that. So now I'm going to show you how to import files into your project. So you can choose File Import or choose Command I. It's best to get comfortable with the shortcut keys because it just makes things move a lot faster. You can import a folder or you can import individual files. So I'm going to go ahead and import the folder. And remember, the folder is what you're going to see here is going to be like a mirror of whatever it is in your root folder. So if you make any changes into your root folder, you want to make sure to update whatever file you have in here. Like if you change the name here, you want to make sure to change the names to match what you have in your folder that you created on your desktop. So I'm going to create on this file here. I'm going to go ahead and say open, and you can see when I click here, now my images appear here, and I can drag them on my page and I can animate them. So I have my images here. Now I'm going to show you how to import an audio file. So if I do Command I, I'm going to make sure I'm in the same folder. I already added a music folder. So if you have, I'm going to create a folder, call it music, and I'm going to actually find this cancel. I have this here, my music file. I'm going to put it inside this folder. So again, I can add the entire folder if I have multiple files in it. Again, Command I, and then make sure you are in the After Effects folder. So if you click on the music, you can see that you just don't have, you're just importing it as the entirety of the folder. But let's say if you want to just import an individual file, you'd want to click, it automatically gives you the format for whatever file you're creating. I'm going to go ahead and just click on the music and open that up. And I'm going to choose Command I again. And this time, I'm going to maybe add another folder, photograph here. Maybe this one. Then I'm going to just bring a folder, and I'm going to just call it 4. And if I come back here, you'll see that it is asking me how I want to import the photos. I mean, if I click on the photo folder, it's going to just import the entire thing again, which I don't want. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the number 4 image, and basically it gives me an option. It says, okay, you want to import it as a JPEG, or how do you want to import this as? So I'm going to click and make sure that it just imports it with JPEG. We're going to talk about these later. And now you can see that it imported the JPEG. If I want to change the name of the file, I can simply click on it and press the return key and maybe add like 04 to be consistent with the other names. And I'm going to simply drag it because it's sitting in the music folder, so it's not in the right place. I'm just going to go ahead and drag it to the photo. So now it is in the correct spot. Also, I want to click again, click on the name, press the return key, and I'm going to get rid of this test. Maybe I'll just say week 1. So this is how you can change the name of your composition and your content. And you can also see it up here. This is your composition. So I'm going to go ahead and drag like a photograph here, and as you could see, the photo is rather large. If you press Option Command letter F, it's gonna fit it in, but sometimes it's gonna distort it like it did on this file. So in that case, you want to just use Command minus to reduce your viewing mode, hold the Shift key, and simply click on the edge of the file and kind of scale it down. So this way you're ensuring that the picture is not getting distorted. You can also use your property inspector and open up this arrow. Remember, every time you see an arrow, that means there are things happening on that you can change. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and you can see the transform option, and you want to open it up, and I can scale this. So you can see that this says it's 46% of whatever the original picture was. So I can go ahead and use that to scale the image down. So it's important when you're bringing the pictures in to remember that you're working in a horizontal workspace, and the horizontal workspace kind of allows you to fill the entire page, the viewing area, rather than if you use a vertical picture, which is going to give you like negative, like blank space, like it's going to be, you know, like which is fine if you, let's say you want to have a vertical picture, you want to have a text added to the side of the picture, but at this point we don't want that. So I just added Command Z to get out of the changes that I've made. So these transform options is actually where we add the animation. So I'm going to go quickly over what each one of these options mean. So anchor point is the center of your composition, or your whatever media you have on your page is going to be the center of that. So if I move this around, this is a horizontal movement. Always the first number is the horizontal and the second number is the vertical. So this is moving up and down, and this is moving left and right. Position is where how you want to animate your image in and out of the frame is the position, the horizontal position, the vertical position of your picture. The scale is the size of your media. Rotation is basically, I'll talk about rotation just in a little bit. We'll come back to this. Opacity is if you want something to start from 0 opacity and then animate into full opacity. So for anything to happen, or any kind of animation to happen, you need a minimum of 2 keyframes, which means that the key points where a change is happening over time. So for example, so I'm going to actually delete this picture and bring this other picture in. And this one, let's say I want to animate this so that it's moving from up to down. Okay, and I want to scale it as well. So again, we know that for any type of animation to happen, we need at least a minimum of 2 keyframes. So I'm going to open this up, and again, remember that keyframes imply like a major change happening over time. So I know for this particular animation, I want to change my anchor point, and I want to change my scale. And I want the animation to happen vertically. So, and you could see when I click on these icons here, this is where, when I click on this keyframe creator here, which looks like a stopwatch, you can see it turns blue, and then it turns blue here, and then I get like this diamond looking shapes. If I click this little arrow here, it's going to automatically move my time indicator. This is my time indicator, which basically tells me where I am in my horizontal watch or timeline. So it's a really accurate way of creating and moving the time indicator to where they want to be, because when you make complex animations, sometimes you have many keyframes. So I'm going to drag my time indicator. I'm going to say, okay, go to 28 seconds here, and over here I want you to go up maybe somewhere around here, and I want you to scale down. I'm gonna have to modify this one a little bit, so I'm gonna scale this down. Maybe here, and I'm gonna go back to my, because I don't want to see these black areas here. Let me see here. I'm gonna actually scale it further down, but I don't want to see any of the black background here. So which means that I'm gonna come back here, and I'm still on the same 2 keyframes. I'm gonna come back here and move my picture up there. So now, and I'm gonna, if I want to move these 2 keyframes, if I click and drag, and you can see they're both highlighted, I can drag them like further back or front. And the one thing that what we want to look at is, like, when I play this back by clicking on the spacebar, you can see a subtle animation happening, but it's moving a little slow. So if I want this to move faster, I need to click and drag on these 2 keyframes so they're highlighted together. If they're not blue, means they're not highlighted. And then if I come back and put it over here, you could see that my animation is playing a lot faster. So the closer the keyframes are together, the faster your animation is going to play. And if you want to stop the playback, just you press the spacebar again, and the animation will stop. Now if I drag this here, again, remember, you click and you drag, so, and it's highlighted blue. If I now play, it's just playing a lot faster. I don't like that speed, so I'm gonna move that to the 15 seconds for now, or maybe somewhere 15 seconds. And then now I think the speed is gonna be pretty decent. Okay, and then let's say now I want to and I always use these arrows to navigate between the keyframes. Maybe you want to add an opacity. I'm going to click on opacity and put this maybe on 0. But maybe if I wanted to get to full opacity at 16, all I have to do is to click on this arrow and it'll take me to that, and then I can change this opacity to 100. But I think that's not going to look too good. So if I play this, maybe I decide that I want, by the 3rd second, I want the full opacity, the picture to have full opacity. So I can simply click and drag on my opacity keyframe that I created, and I can just move it closer. And now you can see that it just plays a lot faster, and the opacity just kind of, it has about 3 seconds to show us the full picture. So now this is basically my layer. If I want to grab another picture, I can simply click and let's see, maybe I'll grab this one. You can drag and drop the other picture, and you can see again that it changes to it adds the picture to the top, and it's identified in like this blue purpley color. So I can open this up now, and again, these are your transform options, and I can maybe, if I want to, you know, I can do the same animation here, but for now I'm just going to just not do that because I want to show you another thing here. So maybe we have the, let's see here, so we have this animation that basically stops at the 15 seconds. So maybe I want this picture to show up after that picture. So all I have to do, I'm gonna actually move that back to 100. And if you click, because remember I scaled it down, you just put in the number and it just scales it back up. If you click on this layer here and you drag it, basically now you can see that picture, and then it jumps to this picture. So I can sort of change, you know, maybe I don't want this picture to show up, so we're good, and then I want this picture to appear. So when this layer 2 ends, layer 3 begins. So I'm going to do the same thing, and you can also copy and paste frames. So if I'm happy with what I did over here, I can simply copy these keyframes, because this ensures consistency, and I simply Command C and Command V instead of having to redo the whole thing again. So maybe this one, I'll just move it a little further back. Maybe if I don't want the transparency, if I want it to be faster, I simply can grab this transparent option and move it closer to the 0, because remember it started at 0 opacity, moving to 100. So you can just play around with these settings, and now you can see that the same kind of scaling down that I did for my layer 2 basically is going to keep it consistent, and it's going to apply it to the second layer. And I think maybe this one, if I click on this scale, you could see that I need to play around with these a little bit so that it's sitting inside the frame. So I'm going to just use my navigation arrow, and remember, as long as it's looking, you click on this icon and click, and you see that it's turned blue. You can change these icons without adding additional keyframes. So for this one, I want to move it to the left. So remember, this is horizontal movement, this is vertical. I'm going to move it to the left, because changing the anchor frame and scale allows for much smoother animation. So I'm going to, you know, just have to fine tune that a little bit, and I'm going to come back to my scale. So let's say this is, I'm kind of happy with like this. I'm going to just go back to the X and the Y, and I'm going to push this up. So this is where you actually can fine-tune your animation once you have your keyframes. And it's basically very smooth animation that happens when you change these two properties together. When you want to scale something down and making sure that it's the center of the picture is not jumping around, moving. And also remember that you can have multiple compositions in a project. You can have only one project but multiple compositions. When you're working, make sure you save your work often. So I'm going to make another composition here. You simply click on this icon and it basically defaults to the settings that I had. Maybe for this one though, I just want to have a 10-second animation. And this one, I'm just going to use, I want to use the rotation option here. So from the top menu, this is your home, this is your selection tool, this is your hand tool, where you can move things around, this is your magnifying tool, this is your rotation tool, this is your anchor. Basically it shows you where your anchor point is, because sometimes we want to have my anchor point, you want to have it in the center, and other times you may want to have it to the corners of your picture. Here is where you create shapes for your projects, which we'll talk about in future tutorials. Here's your pen tool, here's your text tool. This is similar to Illustrator, and we'll talk about these other options later. So I'm gonna go ahead and click here, and I'm gonna choose the star tool, and you can see that for the star tool I have a fill of red and I have a stroke of 2. I'm gonna hold the shift key and I'm gonna drag this. There is a problem with After Effects where sometimes it doesn't put the center of the picture. Right now it's okay, I can see the center of my picture is in the middle, but if you want to, it's not quite in the middle. So if you want to change that, you want to drag on that little icon that I showed you and you can move it around here. So if I want to change the color, so this is the shape layer. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the selection tool, and you can click on, let's say, the red, and maybe you want to change it to green, and maybe the stroke instead of 2, if you click on it, you can, maybe you want to have it like maybe 30 or something. And you can modify and animate these, and I'm going to show you on a different tutorial on how to animate a star. Right now I'm just going to show you a rotation. So again, I'm going to come back here to my transform tool, and this time we're going to work on rotation. So this is really, really important for rotation property. The first keyframe, this is when you fully have a full 360 rotation. That's the first set of numbers. The second set of numbers is the degrees. So I'm clicking on the first keyframe. It's all should be on 0 for this part of this exercise. I'm gonna move it to the 5th second, and I'm going to change that first set of numbers to 10. Now you can see that my stars are animating at a very high speed. If I click on the arrow key and I change the 10 to, let's say, 1, and I'm simply dragging the icon and moving it there, you can see that it is animating a lot slower. Now if I go to this, let's say, a couple seconds later, and if I just change like a little bit of this degree, you can see that now full, and then it just stops based on the, how far, we're on the 39 degrees. So this is the degrees of rotation, the second set of numbers. The first set of numbers is the full cycle of durations. So to go over some of these other settings, this is the eyeball. Basically is where you can turn your layer off and on. This option, we're going to talk about it later. This is your lock button, which means that you can't make any additional changes to your layer. This one also, we're going to talk about it later, but this is very similar to hide. It just hides the layer in the timeline. This is your raster button, this little circular shape. That's usually, we use this for any Illustrator files to make sure that it doesn't get pixelated on the edge. This is your rasterize button, and if you hover over the top of the icons, you can see what each one of these mean. So this is the raster button for illustrations. This is your effects. These are your frame blending, which we'll talk about later. We're going to talk about this later as well. And this is your adjustment layer, and this is your 3D layer. So those are what these mean, and as we work on different projects, I'm going to cover each and every single one of these options. Also, the details of manipulating the shape layers would be covered in another exercise later on. But for now, we just want to kind of get an understanding of how the interface works, and how you can add things to your page, and how you can do basic animations to that. So this animation is based on having your anchor point in the center. And I'm going to go ahead and actually hide this and create a new layer. And this time I'm going to do like a matte, just a solid. And I'm going to make this one red. So this method is different than the other method. And now it's basically just shows me a solid box. And this one is actually an actual layer, which means that, remember, my background of my composition is black, but in reality there's really nothing there. But this red is actually a box that I've created that is red. So I'm going to go ahead and make it smaller, and maybe if I want to change my layers, their color, Command Shift Y, or you choose layer solid settings, and maybe I want to make it a little less bright. See, I want to, okay, something like that. Now I'm gonna actually make it a lot smaller. Now I'm gonna open up my property inspector, and there are shortcut keys to access these options, which we'll cover later. So for this one, I don't want the anchor point to be in the middle. So if I want to change the position of the anchor point, I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to click on the move tool and move this little circular thing to the edge. Now if I click on the rotation, remember the first set of keyframes need to be on 0, 0. Then you move your time indicator to the different place in time, because things change over time. And if I change this to, let's say, 10, you can see that my animation is changing, moving from that corner. If I just change it to 1, you can see it kind of slower how it's moving from that corner. And if I come back here to my position, oops, make sure you're on your V for move. So maybe I have my box here, and then when I can click on this arrow key, I want it to move over here. And you want to make sure that you have a keyframe. Oops, actually, so let me just make sure you move back here. I have my keyframe. Oh, sorry, I was on the wrong place. So I'm gonna click on position. So for the animation to work, you want to make sure So as you can see, I've moved my anchor point here, and we looked at the rotation animation here. And if I want now to have the position of my animation to change, I can simply go back and put the box on the top left, click the icon for the position, move this arrow key to go to the second set of numbers that I have, and create basically move this down. As you can see, as I move it down, you can see the path of my movement, and these are called twinning, which means they're in between keyframes, which After Effects creates for us to show us the path of this animation. So this is basically what it's going to look like. And if I wanted to move faster, I simply go back here and just 5. And if I want to, let's say, if I want to scale it down, I can also do that. So I click on the arrow key, click on scale, and then go back to my last keyframe, and here I'm going to just reduce the scale, or maybe make it bigger, however you want to do that. If I, so you can just adjust this. So maybe I go back to my first keyframe. I'm gonna say, okay, you know what? Make this really small, and you can hold the Shift key as you change things. Maybe it's gonna kind of start like that. And now, so this is how you can actually add shape layers and regular solids to animate, to add content to your projects and to animate them using the various property options that you have available to you in After Effects. And as you could see, my shape layer color is identified in like a blue-gray, whereas my solid layer is identified as red. And if I add my music layer here, you could see that the music layer, which you can basically add and have it play with your animation, it's basically the color is kind of a lime green. So this is a basic introduction to Adobe After Effects interface, and there are many things that we're going to be covering as we learn about the different options that we have available to us. So anytime if you're losing your panels, you want to always make sure to go to your workplace and reset your default. So this is the option you want to select in case your panels start not looking the way that they're supposed to be looking and you can't find certain panels. So I hope you enjoyed this introduction to using After Effects. As I mentioned before, every week we're going to have exercises, and later on we're going to have projects where we're going to dive deeper into each one of these settings. But this video should give you a good overview of the After Effects interface. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me or set up an appointment to meet me during my office hours.